there, I'm Pauline, and you are listening to Financial Wellness with Pauline. You know, I wear quite a few hats. I'm a mom, a value investor, and yes, I run a few businesses too. But what really gets me excited is helping people like you build wealth that lasts, while still having time for what matters in life. I'm thrilled today to have with me Dr. Celeste Simmons, the creative force behind creating change. Well, her background. Now, here's someone who started out as a forensic psychologist. And she turned this passion into something really amazing. And she's serving the target audience are families who have separated in such a unique way that I can't wait to hear their stories. So grab your coffee or maybe in this afternoon tea and let's dive into what makes a business not just successful, but truly meaningful. So let me welcome Dr. Celeste Simmons. Hi, Dr. Celeste. How are you doing today?
Hi, how are you? Good, I'm good.
Great. Now, just now I was talking a little bit about this forensic psychologist, about helping families who have separated. Okay, maybe tell us a little bit more what this is really about. Because when I was saying it, maybe some of them may not understand, or I also probably maybe know a little bit, but don't really quite get it, what it means in your forensic psychology is helping families who have separated.
Yes, I get that all the time. People are like, ooh, that sounds fancy, but they don't really know what it means. And basically all it means is I'm a psychologist and I understand the law. So I can work with people who have been involved with the court system somehow. And I have a bigger specialty within that, which is working with families. So usually people who end up in the court systems and families have child custody issues. They're not getting along. They don't know how to raise their kids peacefully once they've separated.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more. What exactly do you do maybe on a daily basis? When you mention about that you are helping them, what exactly do you help them about? Like, for example, do you counsel them or do something specific together with them or educational programs? Yeah.
So it depends. It depends. Usually, historically, when I started my business, the people who came to me, the judge says, you have to see a psychologist. You have to do therapy. You have to address these things, or you need to get a psychological evaluation where I do testing and then I write a report and then I provide it to the courts, collaborate with attorneys. So those folks who are mandated, that's usually what they're getting. Then I have another crowd of people who aren't necessarily mandated or ordered to go to court, but they're recommended that they should do it because they've had enough issues where someone saw that it could be helpful for them.
Yeah.
And then I have a third group of people who aren't mandated at all, but they're struggling or they're seeing behaviors in their kids and they don't really know what to do about it. And so I could do therapy. I could do psychological evaluations. Sometimes we just do consultations. People don't know what to do next. And so I actually shifted that piece of my business because I found that a lot of people who have broken up, they don't necessarily need therapy or they're not ordered to do therapy. They need these consultation services. They're like, hey, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Help.
I see. So you mentioned regarding this thing on therapy and consultation now. Maybe help me a little. What's the difference?
Okay.
Yeah.
So therapy is more addressing deep-rooted emotional issues. So I'm sure you hear people talking about depression, anxiety, things like that. Sometimes people do have depression and anxiety, or they have a mental health diagnosis, which is complicating their family dynamics. So they need therapy, right? Or you have folks who are not getting along so much they can't even speak to each other, so they need someone to intervene. Sometimes those folks are ordered for therapy. Again, I've found that that's not always the most appropriate thing, but it's just addressing these deep-rooted emotional issues. Whereas consultation is more like action steps. This is my situation. Help me get out of it. What do I do next so that I can get to this result that I'm looking for?
Yeah. Sounds really interesting that you are doing, but it seems like it takes a lot of emotional aspect into it. I believe, you are dealing with people who may not be one of the most positive people that we are looking at. Yeah. So maybe you'd like to let us share with us a little bit more. What makes you want to go into this business? Yeah.
I've been asked that question so many times.
Opportunity, you know? Yeah.
It's so funny because it's like, it is. Here's the thing though, whenever you're going through something, it's really easy for you to look at someone else's situation and give them feedback about what they could do because you're not in it. But when you're in it, it's really, really overwhelming. And so for me, I'm not in these families' positions. And so it's easier for me to look at their situation and come up with things that we can do and ways that they can address things because I'm not in the middle of it. And so I actually find the harder work easier because you know exactly where you're starting. And so for me, it's not emotionally taxing. It's actually really rewarding because when people start to take these little steps, it makes such a big difference because they're in so much duress.
Yeah. So is this something that you would like to do since young? Like,
no, I became a forensic psychologist. What do you say?
No, as in that you envisage that I want to really go and help families since young.
Not exactly. No, I became a forensic psychologist by accident. I actually wanted to be a pediatrician. I got into this bad accident as a little girl, you know, those flatbed trailer trucks that carry the cars. Well, I was playing tag with my family, like cousins, and I thought it was a good place to sit. So I sat on one, it closed on me. My head got cut, I had to go to the hospital. It was a whole thing. And so in the hospital, though, I met these pediatricians. I thought they were so nice. And I was 5 years old. I had to spend my 6th birthday in the hospital. But I'm like, these people are so nice. They're treating me so nice. And I just remember that I'm like, I'm going to do that when I get bigger. Right. And so that kind of continued for a bit. And I decided I was going to be a pediatrician. And I actually went to college and was pre-med and all of that. And then I started like shadowing someone who does that work. And I was like, I actually don't want to do this. I want to work with people more long term. I don't want to see them once a year. So, you know, my childhood understanding of what I thought it meant to help kids changed. And so I discovered psychology by accident, went to school to be a therapist. And then I worked with a boss who had a degree in forensic psychology. I worked with kids in the justice system. And so I loved my job because those kids, the things they go through, it's like the opposite of what you want to happen for kids. And so I just loved my job. And my boss said, if you love this job, you should look into forensic psychology if you're ever going to go back to school. And so I did. And the rest is history. And so because I knew, but I went back to school that I wanted to work with families, I started making sure I had training opportunities that worked with families. And so that's how it all kind of started.
I see. So when you mentioned about helping families who have like been separated, at which juncture should they be going to you? Or should everyone, like if I have a broken marriage, do we go to you immediately? Or it would be a case of I need to assess myself, or there's actually a certain structure for us to know before we go to you?
I think it depends on the situation. So I remember the very first couple I had who came for consultation for co-parenting when I was doing like my postdoc training, excuse me, they were going to get a divorce and they decided, you know, hey, we don't know how to navigate this. We're going to speak to someone so we can, you know, plan for these things that are going to come up. Let's say one of us gets another relationship or gets remarried. How do we navigate 2 households with our children? And so that was like really valuable to me because I had been used to already seeing people who came after things were really, really hard. And so I would say to that is I thought they were admirable. I was admiring them because it's like, okay, we see that this could become an issue. We have an amicable breakup, but let's figure out how to troubleshoot before the trouble comes. And so I think that depends on the situation, right? Sometimes people are still together. They haven't made that decision. They're struggling with things. And so I would say before things get overwhelming, when you start noticing any signs of like disconnect consistently, it might be a good idea to speak to someone before things get really, really out of hand.
Yeah. So I believe when you started this off, you started off as a psychologist working under an organization. So right now you are on your own and setting this up as a business. Yeah.
Yes.
Being an entrepreneur, what is the difference being like an entrepreneur versus a real forensic, just a forensic psychologist? It's like doctors or the physicians. When I'm a physician in the hospital, I don't care about the business. Now, if I own my own medical center as a physician, I would care about a business. So maybe you'd like to share with us your perspective of how do you balance this up? Business versus being like a forensic psychologist. Yeah.
So I think to me, they're pretty similar. When I work for somebody else, I still care about the people I work with. I still want them to have positive outcomes. And I think when you have your own business, you still want that for your patients or your clients or whatever you call them. So that part I don't see necessarily differently. But what I do see differently is when people come into me and they see other people and they're basically doing it again because someone didn't have my niche or experience. And so they didn't get the requirements filled that they were supposed to. I'm like, I really want to make sure that they get what they need. And then anybody else who's working with me, I want to make sure they're trained to know what to look for so that these people can get what they need. Because ultimately, I don't want people to stay with me forever or stay with anyone who works with me forever, because you want people to be able to have good quality of life. You want to give them the skills and the tools that they need so that they can get through these difficult times.
Yeah. So this is probably the dilemma. It's like, being a psych, when we talk about business, I'm a business person myself, and I always love it. When we talk about business, it's about profits. It's about revenue. So it's about the growth of the business. Of course, when we talk about business, it's not just purely about profits, right? And being an entrepreneur, why we are an entrepreneur is because we are here to solve a problem. And the bigger problem we solve, right, the more money and profits, it's like a byproduct. Okay, so, but in some of, I always find that it's very intriguing in the medical science, medical field, because it's a case of there are people who need help, right? Yet, what we want to do is we hope that they get rid, of this, the illness, the disease, so that they don't need to come and look for us again. So that's the of like a business person, where the business person would be, for example, if I'm an F&B selling burgers, I want my customers to love my burgers so much that they are always my repeat customers. Please don't leave me. Now, I heard you saying just now was like, I hope they will leave me one day. So this is part of that I would be asking regarding the entrepreneurship, the business side of it. Yeah. And versus your specialist. So probably I want to ask you, how do you then balance this in terms of a business growth and versus that passion of yours?
So here, I have a funny little tidbit story about that. I had this supervisor during my internship. He said to me, he's like, if you weren't a psychologist or, if you decided to do something different, what would you do? I was like, I would swim every day. And so we were talking, and I was like, my goal rather is to do my job so well that no one needs a psychologist. And it's like, whoa. Right. And I was like, I would just swim and, perfect my speed and all of that. That's what I would love to do. But here's the thing, right? That's going to be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And the more I do my job well, the more people tell other folks that I did my job well. And human population is still going. People every day are having children. People every day are getting married. People every day are having conflict. And so I see it as a way that you can change like generations of how people handle things. Because if I help this family and, they start doing things differently with their kids, that impacts their kids' outcomes. That impacts how the kids grow up, how they become adults, how they interact with their own family. So it's like a generational thing that you can have this impact on. So I don't necessarily feel like everybody's not going to eat a burger, right? But we all have personal struggles. We all have conflict. That's going to be something that continues to happen. And so I, again, just want to do my job so well that people can say, hey, this is the place that you need to go if you're having these struggles, because they feel like they can gain the tools they need to move forward. But the other piece of that is, let's say I'm going through this separation right now, and I get the tools that I need to learn how to get through this specific trouble that I'm, experiencing, whatever that is. But then maybe I get down the line and now I'm in a blended family. So So that's a different dilemma. And now different things are coming. So they might come back to me. They might still be repeat customers. And every time they come back, they're getting something more that makes their lives better. And so you can still have that. But I think the outcome is still the same. You still try and do the best possible job that you can to help people have better quality of life because it can impact generations.
Yeah. This is the thing I know why Dr. Celeste can be so successful is because it's that passion, the mission that she has deep down in her heart. And because she wants to do that, and she does it so well that what happens was there's this referral, word of mouth. You get more and more. And how we wish is just like doctors saying, how we wish with the advancement of medical sciences, there are less and less patients. Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be true. It seems like with medical advances, there will just be new probably diseases and other form of illnesses that pop out, and viruses as well. And it just go on, right? So I also think that at this juncture, when we talk about business growth, there will definitely be, in one way or another, that people would need certain form of a counseling probably. And sometimes, just to ask, when we talk about like counseling or therapy, is it a form of a physical form? Like is an illness per se, like they are short of certain hormones or certain chemicals that's inside their body, or is due to emotional external effect? So what I'm asking is it due to the internal body that's causing all these things, like the emotional problems, or it is due to environmental? Which one?
But which one comes first? It depends, right? And I don't think we always know the answers to that. So they go hand in hand. Let's say, for instance, I used to work at a health center and people would come in because they're having chest pain or they're having headaches or whatever. The doctor is like, I'm going to refer you to the psychologist because I don't know what's going on here. And so come to find out, you start talking to them, they have anxiety, right? And people will say, I've never had anxiety. It's like, but you did, right? Because all these physical symptoms that have been manifesting, they haven't found the source and now you're here. And the source is internal, right? And so that physical manifestation is because of what's going on inside. And so if we can address that, then, that helps with the physical symptoms. I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking, but I think those two things only go together.
Yeah, because my dad, during the COVID time, faces this issue. Many years ago, she had depression, but lately, after that, it seems to be quite all right. But during COVID, that depression came back again. And he has been admitting himself for heart attacks. 3 times he's in the hospital. The doctors, after going through all the checks, say he doesn't have any heart issues. So in the end, I realized it may not be the physical heart issue. It could be some emotional issue. And that was where I bring him to a psychologist. And yes, true enough, he had depression. And all this is what you mentioned, anxiety attack. He can't breathe. He thought he started having the chest pain. And all this chest pain was actually more emotional effect rather than the really the chest or the heart having a cardiac arrest and so on. So this looking at that seems like because of the macro environmental, the stress, and also probably the diet, the lifestyle that people are going through right now, especially in developed countries, stress be one of the major factors for such an issue that people are facing. So as your business is growing, what are your non-negotiable principles for your business successes? Yeah.
Non-negotiable, I think when we're talking about mental health is my own mental health. That's not negotiable at all. I think if mental health in general, right? Let's just put it all under the umbrella. If I'm not well, then how do I teach other people to be well?
Yes.
So I would say that's number one. I think quality of life. So one of the things that I talked about in the beginning was, starting out my business, doing all of these high stakes cases, essentially. Now, I do like it. It's rewarding. However, a high volume of those can be really stressful, right? And so I learned what that limit was. And so I want to be respectful of that, because if I'm not, then that impacts my health, or that impacts my relationships with other people. And so I'm trying to teach people the tools and tips to have quality of life. I need to do that myself. So definitely my own health, my own quality of life, my time is not negotiable. And so I need to have time where I can rejuvenate. If I don't get that again, I can't do my job well. I can't do me well. And so I would say those are probably the three biggest things that are most important. And then the technical stuff that, you figure out, okay, how many people are going to see, what kind of services are you going to provide? All of that comes after me. So.
Yeah. I mean, true. I believe you have to be the model, practicing and walking the talk to make sure that you balance your own life versus the work, right? Yeah. Having this kind of a balanced lifestyle to make sure that first things first, you take care of yourself. Yeah. And not to compromise it in helping others. Yes. So this is where...
Yeah, I want to say one more thing about that too. It's like, there's lots of folks in the mental health field, but we even have an ethical code that obligates us if our personal issues are impacting our work. We're supposed to address that. And so it's not even just something that I value, but it's something that I'm held to a standard of. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot. A lot of mental health practitioners get overworked and they're tired, and it's something that I think needs to change.
Yes, I would think so too, because I've known of a same psychologist. I was meeting her, and why I was helping her is because she has some health issues. Yeah, she's also dealing with inmates, and she has to carry two phones. It was a Saturday. We were supposed to have tea, and why she's meeting me was because she has been putting on weight. Yeah. And I actually help people in terms of their wellness as well, in terms of fats and weight management. Apart from having my business in financials, I also do wellness business. So she came to me and I asked, you are a doctor yourself. You know about all these sciences. And she said, yeah, I know, but it's just so stressful. I became an emotional eater. And when I'm stressed, I just load myself with sugar. I mean, that's quite typical because like women, when we are stressed out, started to load herself with sugar and it doesn't help. When right now she's going through this thing called the perimenopause. And the next thing she has to do is she needs to take hormonal pills, right? And all these just wreck her health. And right now she has put on so much weight that she needs to do some form of a health management in terms of weight as well. Yeah, I really find that being a specialist in terms of your field, plus being a business person. Plus, I also understand Dr. Celeste is also a single mom, taking care of your children. So this is where, just now I mentioned, as an entrepreneur, and especially a women entrepreneur who needs to run a family as well, right? How do you balance, just now I mentioned, right, your personal well-being and your business growth? So this is really important. So what is then the biggest challenge? I believe when you first started off in this business, what is the biggest challenge that you have during the first year of the business, and how did you overcome it? Understanding that you really have so many roles you got to play around, and also you might not be in business before. I believe you are very good in your field, but running is a totally different story. So what is the biggest challenge that you faced in your first year?
Well, I think COVID was the biggest challenge. And the second was shifting my mindset. So I was excited. I mentioned that briefly, like I was excited. Oh, this is great. I'm finally going to be on the path to doing my own thing. And then this big thing happened. And it's like, oh, I can't see people in person. That was going to be the bulk of how I do things. Luckily, I had the online piece, but like people were losing their jobs, not going to work, losing income. And I was like, well, how can I appeal to people who need help, especially in this difficult time, and still, like grow my business and all that. And so I think that was really, really difficult. I feel like you had a 3-part question in there. The other piece though was like taking care of myself. So I didn't want to work all the time. My son, he was younger. And so I value like watching him grow and seeing all the things that he's learning to do. And so it was like, okay, how do I manage or how do I shift things so that I can grow my business, still have time with him, and then still kind of like service people in a high level way. And so maybe that's I guess 3-part answer, but definitely that was difficult. But funny enough, actually, I ended up getting a bunch of clients once I did that, because people didn't know that there were like HIPAA compliant platforms you could do therapy on. And so, so that was really great.
Oh, okay. So tell me more about this HIPAA compliant platforms. How does it actually work?
Yeah. So in the United States, you are required to keep people's information private. And so if you just get on a FaceTime call, I know they made a lot of concessions for COVID, but if you just get on a FaceTime call, that doesn't meet those requirements, right? Like someone could get into that and your session could be compromised, or however that means. But it means they meet a set of standards that is government level, I guess you can say, okayed, so that you can have like healthcare visits, which are confidential, right? That's no one's business. What you're discussing and what's going on with you, that's supposed to be something that you can keep private. So these platforms meet the standard of that, and it's video. Some of them allow so that if people, they don't want to be on video, they can just do the audio, but still get that support they need, which was really, really, really huge during that time where everything was shut down.
Yeah. So probably at this juncture, we talk about the biggest challenge. Then what is your biggest win then in this field? Maybe you want to share with us, and what actually happened, the result that you have seen? Yes.
Well, actually, I still feel like my biggest win is with me. So I talked about mindset shift with the COVID, the biggest challenge. I think, well, maybe this is the second challenge. A couple years ago, I realized I was working too much, and it was really starting to impact me to the extent that I took on clients that I knew I probably wasn't going to work well with. Because I had the niche, I was like, well, I'll just work with them, right? They need this. But I think it's really important to think about, when you work with people, you need to work well with them, right? So it's not just that you have the skills, but there needs to be a matchup of like how well you're going to work together. And that was really taxing. And it took a lot of time from me, and I was doing all the things. And so after that, I mean, and all the clients that I had at the time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be more selective with who I choose to work with, even if they have these mandates. And I'm also going to run my business a little bit differently. So that's how the Creating Change with Dr. Celeste came about, because I'm like, okay, some of these people who come in, they don't need therapy. They just need some tools on how they can move forward. Some people come in, they've been in the court system for years, they don't have any real changes. And so making the mindset shift about how I was going to do my business. Okay, I'm not going to see 30 clients a week and, just have that be my schedule. It's not sustainable. So making the shift for that, figuring out, okay, who am I seeing? Who's coming to me? Does that work for me? Does it work for them? And then also, how else can I continue to serve people still in my psychologist capacity if that's needed? And if that's not needed, figure out how I can still help them move forward. So in a short sentence, I guess I would just say, making the shift towards, okay, this piece of my business that is doing so well, I'm getting the referrals and things like that, but it doesn't really work for me. And so I think everything starts with you. How things impact you impacts how you move forward, which is, again, what I tell other people and try and teach other people to.
So maybe I'd like to ask you, do you have any mentor in your entrepreneurship journey?
Oh my goodness. That's been a challenge. So I would say initially I did. My mentorship was from people running practices as psychologists.
Okay.
But they've seen a billion clients, right? And so when I made, the shift to like, is this working for me? Like, is this sustainable? How else can I serve people? Those people no longer served as mentors, if that makes sense. That's not something that I'm trying to strive for. So it's actually been a little bit more difficult. I have this lady that I like. She's She's written a couple of books. Her name is Jamie Kernlima. She has this book called Believe It. And then she has one called Worthy. And she talks about how she was like the first CEO for like this major makeup company in the United States. They acquired her business for like $2 billion. but she puts herself first. And so I don't know her, but I like her books, and I feel like that's something I value. But unfortunately, for people in my field, I don't know a lot of people who are doing things the way I'm trying to do them. I know people who will see 1 billion clients. If that's not sustainable, then they raise their rates and see less clients.
Yeah.
And that's not something I want to do either. I feel like some people, especially people who are in the court systems, they have so many mandates. It gets so expensive. I would rather have a high demand of my time and not be able to serve everyone at once and still have it be affordable. And so anyway, I said a lot of things, but I think the mindset shifts, that's always my biggest wins.
Yeah, because yes. So if you have one advice for anyone who want to start a business, what is that advice that you would give?
I would say do things in a way that aligns with who you are as a person. I think lots of people have lots of advice for how you should do things. I've listened to those things, and it's been very overwhelming. And I've spent lots of time and money on things that quote unquote don't work, but it just doesn't work for me. Like everything doesn't work for everyone. So if you find yourself kind of building and realizing that the model that you're creating isn't working, then make a shift and figure out something else that does. I think it's okay to do that.
Yes, I totally agree. We sometimes, and most of the time as a startup entrepreneur, we most of the time can't get the things right for the first time. So it's always about doing it, take action, fine tune, correction, and really feel fast. Okay, when they say feel fast, get up fast and start to do the correction and make sure that things keep on working. You will get it right one day. Thank you, Dr. Celeste. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
This has been such an eye-opening chat, and you have given us so much to think about. I really love how you have shown that success isn't just about numbers. It's really creating something that people really want, and what matters not only to others, but to you as well. Right, so listeners, if you feel inspired, and I know you are, okay, you can check out under our link below with Dr. Celeste of what she is in her business and her website as well as her social media. So, and if you are thinking, hey, I want to learn more about building wealth while staying true to myself, you can contact me through DM or the link below. Now, I've got some great resources waiting for you on value investing and on business growth as well. So, I always like to say this, building a business isn't about working yourself to the ground. It's about being smart with your time and staying true to what matters to you. So join me next week for another heart-to-heart with someone who's walking the talk in business and life. This is Pauline, reminding you that your best investment is always in yourself. Take care and see you next time. If you like this episode, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. So we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.